All right. Today, on For the Love of Sports, I have Fago Franklin III. He's a sports reporter at Pro Player Insiders. He's also an independent publicist. Ooh, that's a little tongue twister for you. Fago, how you doing today, man?
I'm well, man. How about yourself?
It's a good day to be alive, brother. It is a good day to be alive, but all of them are at this point, right? We're safe, we're healthy, we're happy, we're doing what we love. That's really all we can ask for. So, Fago, the first question I have for everybody on the For the Love of Sports podcast is, why do you love sports so much?
Oh man, that's kind of hard. I basically came into a family that loves sports. My dad ran track, my mother ran track. Obviously, I ran track. I played basketball. I played a little football back in my time. My little brother, he ran track, played volleyball, and played basketball. My sister is was a cheerleader, and she ran track. So sports was just entangled in our family. And so it's just the passion I have with it. I've been watching the Lakers for a very long time. I'm a huge Laker fan, and I'm a diehard Eagles fan. And as well as
no, not the Eagles,
yes,
man. Come on.
yes. I've been a fan since Randall Cunningham,
All right.
and yeah, and Reggie White, those type of individuals. And I watched McNabb, T.O., Jeff Garcia,
Westbrook, Dawkins. I mean, that team's been sad. I'm a huge
Cobb.
Giants fan. I'm a Giants. Kevin Cobb. All right. Yeah, you are a real fan. Look at that. I love it, man.
So, anywho, sports is just something that is an icebreaker for everybody. That's one sport that brings everybody together, and it unites the country, because no matter what gender you are, your race, nationality, anything, it just brings everybody together. I mean, y'all are one big family. And so that's what brings America together, and that's why I love sports so much.
It's so true, man. I mean, like it's just crazy. You could pretty much walk up to anybody at this point, at a bar, at a restaurant, at an outdoor party, and just be like, "So, how'd your fantasy football lineup look this week?" Right? And you could pretty much walk up to anybody at that point. I mean, like, think about it. Like, so I got my girlfriend to start playing fantasy football a couple years ago. We started a little like cute family league. It's my mom, my dad, my brother, myself, my girlfriend. And, it's just funny now. We've always all loved football, but now it's just that extra level. Now there's that, it's more engagement. So now, she's starting to text my brother about, who she should play against me this upcoming week. And it's just like kind of fun to see how, sports do that. And it's always very interesting to me, because you're totally right, man. I mean, we're all a big family when it comes to football, especially. 110, 115, 120 million people stop one Sunday a year to watch a single game that there's only two teams in, right? Like, I'm a Giants fan. They've only been in a couple times since. The Eagles fan, they've been in a few times since. So it's just funny how, it's more of a celebration of sport. And as you said, America, when it comes to especially the Super Bowl and football. And it's so true, man. I mean, track athletes in your entire family. I mean, how was that? Where'd you go to school? And I guess why the heck is track a sport, man? It doesn't even make sense to me at all. I don't get it. It's the worst thing about sports is running, right?
Well, to me, in a metaphorical type of way, it just let me be free. I didn't have no obstacles in front of me. It was just me just running my race. And that's how you have to look at life. You're just running your own race. And so with coming from a sports family, I mean, my dad, of course, won medals. My mom won medals. They got scholarships. Me, on the other hand, I didn't really get a scholarship, but everybody told me when I went to college, when I was like 19 years old, I ended up going to St. Paul's College, a small college down in Lawrenceville, Virginia. And I got tired of running, because it was just like I had to work. Then I had to get ready, train. Then I had to go to some of these track meets. It was so exhausting. I really didn't have time for myself. So when I was 19 years old, at that time, I wanted to leave the nest. I'm like, hey, hey mom, I'm going to, Lawrenceville. She was like, all right, cool. And so I was just, hanging out, doing, what normal young teens do at that time, just trying to figure out myself as well as life. I kind of regretted it to a certain extent. Like when I was younger, like I should have, kept running track, because I could have had a scholarship and I could have, been running in Olympics. I hear it all the time, like, Fago, like, you're very fast. This is in the fourth. So I took a break from school for maybe like 4 to 5 years. In 2012, I ended up getting myself back in an online college. So I was a transfer student at Ashford University. So at first I wanted to become an English professor, because I love writing poetry. And so my favorite poet of all time is Emily Dickinson. So, she was an introvert at that time. I didn't really like people so much. It was like, I was fluctuating with being an introvert slash extrovert. The extrovert part was easy for me because like I'm an outgoing person. Then if you talk about like sports with me,
Mm-hmm.
I'm just, hey, da 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 da
Let's
da. I'm just
go.
like
Yeah.
full, yeah, I'm just full mouth. I'm just in it. So nonetheless, I had like I'm a man of faith. So I asked the good Lord, I'm like, hey, could you point me in the direction of a career where I don't think it's just a job. It's something I love to do. Ironically, it was sports. So in 2012, after I got myself back into school, I ended up getting a internship with In Lacrosse We Trust. So that was the first thing with me joining into the sports career. And so, nevertheless, nobody watches lacrosse. Let's be honest. Like,
The PLL is looking pretty cool. I mean, they have that partnership with Barstool, so that's going to help a
yeah,
lot, in publications
exactly.
and all that. So
Mhm.
that's going to be interesting. But I, I I think that's a pretty fair statement to make. Yes.
Yes. And so, nevertheless, I did some research. I loved it. And it reminded me so much of basketball, soccer, as well as hockey, like a combination of all those sports I just stated. And it was just, I found myself like getting up early in the morning to get on these interviews, to get on these going to some of the
Hmm.
events down in college, and it's just like it was just a thrill. So I'm like, I have to go out there and pursue this. This is something I'm really passionate about. So in 2013, I ended up getting an internship as well as freelancing with Pro Players Insiders. Now, Pro Players Insiders, they deal with everything that's NFL related. So in 2013, I was covering a concert that was sponsored by the Baltimore Ravens at that time because they just won the Super Bowl.
Hmm.
So if Keith Urban, he did a free concert for
Very cool.
everybody that's in Baltimore. So I'm just around all these people I look up to, and it's like, wow. And then I'm in the back. I did not even know that I could go in the back where Keith Urban was at. So I literally walked right past Keith Urban without even realizing it. And I felt like I was scared because it's like I have all this access, I have
Hmm.
the credential on me, and it was just the thrill just to being around those type of people I actually look up to growing up, as well as some of the singers and entertainers that was there. And then it's just like all the fans came and start asking me questions. So at that time I felt important. I'm like, hey, they asking me questions,
Hmm.
what is happening and different things of that nature. So in 2015, that's where I kind of blew up a little bit. So my first NFL game I covered was the Vikings and Steelers down in Canton, Ohio, for the
Hmm.
Hall of Fame out there. Oh man, so I was right there by Randy Moss, Chris Carter, Ben Roethlisberger, Cordell Stewart, all these guys I
Hmm.
used to look up to, and it's like I'm right here, and then I'm with the best of the best. I'm with ESPN, Fox, NBC Sports. I'm like right there in the mix of everything. And my whole thing is I tell people all the time that you have to go out there and gain knowledge. Like we're in the same area, so nobody is better than nobody. Everybody's the same. So I would go ask reporters, hey, what can I do to improve my craft? And they'll tell me, hey, just keep networking. Also just be consistent, be accurate with your news. And so, I took their advice and applied it to my life. So in 2015, I covered NFL, I covered PGA, I covered NASCAR. I covered a whole bunch of different things as being a sports editor for Latage magazine. And so, as an editor, of course, you have to coordinate
Hmm.
and make sure you give assignments to your stringers, reporters, writers, journalists, whatever you want to call them now these days. And I have to make sure that they're assigned to their assignment. And so that gave me a thrill. So in 2015 through 2016, I ended up getting a freelance opportunity with Fox Sports 1340
Hmm.
AM down in DC. And so I was the beat writer for the Washington National, which was pretty cool.
Yeah.
I didn't really watch MLB at that time. However, when I was watching with my dad, I'm a huge Chicago Cubs fan because of Sammy Sosa.
Hmm.
And me and him was watching, all the Chicago games. So I became a fan. And even though I don't really watch MLB like I should now these days, the Cubs will always be my team. Just on
Hmm.
the aspect of, that is something that me and my dad had as far as memories was concerned. and watching Sammy Sosa and that organization. And I'm very grateful that we won in 2016. that,
Yeah,
that
right.
that was crazy. So nevertheless, I was freelancing with Fox Sports 1340 AM. So when I
And
graduated,
so here, let me stop you there. So with, I mean, Fox Sports is a very, very reputable name, especially in sports and everything. I mean, there's Fox Sports, NBC Sports. I mean, you're in one of the biggest sports publications and sports media operations in America here. How do you find that job, and how do you make sure that you're the one that gets it? Because I'm sure A, it was a little difficult. You have to know somebody, but B, I'm sure there was hundreds of other people that had as good of, if not better potential, a better portfolio than you. So what was it that put you and set you apart from everyone else that was potentially trying to get that job?
consistency. Here's the crazy thing. I did not know that the director as well as a reporter was eyeing my profile. So like I was on my social media platforms. If you check out my social media platforms, I'm consistently posting.
And what are
So
those platforms? Tell us. Give it to us.
okay. All right. You can reach me on Fago Franklin III on my Facebook, Super Journalist 87 on my Instagram, Fago Franklin III on my YouTube channel, Fago Franklin III on my LinkedIn.
Love it. Thank you for that.
Oh yeah, no problem, no
All
problem.
of that will be in the show notes too. Anyone listening, don't worry if you didn't write those down. I'll make sure the links will be in the show notes. So thank you, appreciate it, man.
Yay! So, nevertheless, to go back to your question, so they were actually looking at my pictures as well as some of the events that I was reporting at, and they was like, "You're everywhere." And so, Ashley Baker, which is a colleague of mine, she had basically sat there and was like, "Hey, Fago, I think you'd be a great fit for Glenn Thomas, who was the director with Fox Sports 1340 AM." So I spoke with Glenn. Glenn gave me the rundown. He was like, "We actually like your work." All right. So my whole thing is I'm a competitor. So, my whole thing is I don't care whether I'm gonna get that opportunity. I'm gonna make sure that nobody's gonna outwork me, period, point blank. So when I came on, I started hassling my director. And as I tell reporters and writers, hassle your reporter. You got to pick their brain. And then on top of that, you got to show initiative that you really want to be here, that you really want that job. So every day I would post like maybe like 3 to 4 articles on the website.
Wow.
And yeah, no lie. And then like I would already have my connections. That's the thing about me. I was already well connected. So like I would do like feature stories with Emmett Smith, Brandon Marshall, Tammy Bronner, people of those nature, and then I would reach out to them through like via social media. Hey, can I do a feature story with you? Da da da. All right, cool. And then also, like I tell a lot of reporters and journalists that you have to go after different perspectives. So with me, I was going after foundation instead of the analytical side. I was going actually after their foundations. What are they doing with their foundations? Or either what are they doing in a positive aspect outside of their communities? So a lot of people, like prime example, a lot of people talk about LeBron James and what he's doing on the court, but you rarely hear about his school down in Ohio. You might hear you might see 1 or 2 articles about his school, but it's not really that much exposure on his school where it should be, because that's a positive aspect that a lot of people consider like a role model type of status, because a lot of players are not building schools for the underprivileged and trying to make sure that they have somebody that's an encourager, somebody that's a role model. So anyways, to go back with Fox, all I can say is just be consistent, be accurate, and make sure that you're willing to put in that time and efforts. There are some times where you're going to work, 12 to 13-hour shifts, but other people complain about working 13-hour shifts. You smile up there, you have a positive mindset, you pick your director's head. I don't care any question that you have, you go directly to your director or your editor and just start asking different questions. And also just have to know that everybody wants that type of job. What makes you different? So I would say your sources make you different. Consistency will make you different. And then also the perspectives of what you're reporting or going after. So with me, it was more so having a positive featured story on these athletes and celebrities that are doing positive things within their communities or outside of their communities and doing charities and foundations and different things of that nature. So
I love
that's
it.
what set you up. That's what set me apart. And that's
Mhm.
what had gave me that opportunity.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think those are some pretty impressive, as I said, portfolio builders. If you can have those conversations with Emmett Smith, Emmett Smith, one of the greatest running backs of all time, you're clearly not messing around. You're getting into the right circles. You're talking to the right people, and I really love you're just kind of pushing the positivity narrative, because that's so much of the news and the media is negative. I mean, right now, obviously during this pandemic, but the last 10 years, everything, negativity drives ratings, which drives advertisers, which drives more negative news. It's just kind of this awful cycle that these 24-hour news publications have gotten themselves into, that, that's why I don't watch the news, because it's all terrible and I don't, want to feel depressed all day. So it's just the fact that you're now pushing that positivity. I think we do need more of that. I think more people have to realize being positive actually changes your brain. It changes what's going on in your life. And you actually, like attracts like. Obviously, I attract a lot of positive people because I personally think I'm positive. So obviously, this conversation is so far going well, and I expect our relationship to continue to grow. But one thing that I always find really interesting, especially getting into the sports journalism, sports reporting field. So you really love sports. That's why you wanted to do it. As you said, you love what you do, and I think that that's great. But you don't really, now, you're reporting on the NFL. You're not a fan of the Eagles anymore, right? Like, you can still kind of keep that to yourself, but you can't really report on the Eagles as if you were a fan. You have to be very objective and kind of rein that in a little bit. How much has becoming a sports reporter either improved your enjoyment of sports or actually taken away from the enjoyment of sports? Because it's not, I can sit down on the couch and drink a beer and eat chicken wings with my buddies, right, on NFL Sunday, and I can sit there and I can love it and I can let my emotions fly. As we were talking about, that's one of the things that brings people together around sports. How have you been able to cope with that aspect of not really being able to watch it as a fan anymore, but now you're watching it as a career?
It's the same for me, to be honest, because you have to throw out facts. As a fan, when you talk to somebody, you want to talk to somebody that's knowledgeable about their team. So they will give you players, they will give you stats, they will give you even their playoff records. So with me, like with the Eagles, like last year, I was being like kind of brutal on Alshon Jeffries, as well as what's his name on there?
Aguilar, he's not there anymore.
Yeah. He went to the Raiders, which
he went somewhere.
Yeah. But they was always dropping passes. And so everybody knows, I don't care, whether I'm in my career or either as a fan, everybody knows I'm a diehard Eagles fan. I make it known. But also at the same time, I give facts as well as the consistency within that team. And so like I'm out here, I cover the Seahawks. So it's basically, you just got to know the players, your stats, and give honest truth. And don't be biased. When you're reporting about, a team or a player, don't sit there and be like, oh, they suck. Give the reasons why they suck, which is more so of the facts. Like with the Seahawks, as a reporter, I tell fans out here, I'm like, y'all don't have an offensive line, and y'all one dimensional, because last year, Chris Carson ended up getting injured. 2 more running backs, and then they end up getting
Penny got injured. Yeah, that was crazy. Yep.
And then you end up getting back Marshawn Lynch. And everybody's just like, oh my gosh, Marshawn Lynch is going to be back. This and the fourth. But I was like, you don't really have an offensive line. Like, when he was there, in 2012, they actually had a decent offensive line. Everything is built off of an offensive line. And then Russell Wilson, he always have to be scrambling and extend plays with his leg, because that offensive line does not hold up. That's always been their Achilles heel. And then, of course, they didn't really have a tight end. Luke Wilson was injured, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, everybody got injured for them last year. It was crazy.
Yes. And then you go now as a fan to take it back to the Eagles. The Eagles, I was begging the Dallas Cowboys to win a dang on game, because I'm like, you're giving me hope. You're giving me hope. You're giving me hope. You're losing these games. And so now as a fan, I'm like screaming at the Eagles to lose a game, because we were just depleted. We beat the Cowboys with a practice squad team.
Yep.
There was nobody on that team that actually was a household name at all. And Carson Wentz got us into the playoffs. So I'm like screaming. I'm like, yes. Then he ends up going. So I'm like, I'm screaming, I'm throwing F-bombs and everything like that nature, because I felt like in the playoffs, we actually had a chance would hurt Seahawks team. And so,
Mm-hmm.
like, to go back to what I was saying, there's certain words that you would, have to take out, as a reporter,
Mm-hmm.
but you
Mm-hmm.
still can report it. You can still report on your team.
Mm-hmm.
So like, again, accuracy, give facts, and just be consistent. Know everything about your team.
And
So
so, with that, especially that game, the Seahawks Eagles game in the playoffs in Lincoln Financial Field here over in Philadelphia, you covering the Seahawks, being a fan of the Eagles. In everybody's opinion, the Eagles would have won that game, at least in my opinion and in my circle's opinion. The Eagles would have won that game if Carson Wentz stays healthy, like if he doesn't get concussed, right? Like they almost won with a Josh McCown, who I think at one point like tore his hamstring off the bone or something. Like what a trooper there. But like how, especially that game, I think that's a microcosm of the question too, right? You're a fan of the Eagles, you're covering the Seahawks. How did that, like, what was it like being a reporter for that game and really having to give honesty and fact and truth? I mean, I'm sure you did it, but like what the internal battle, I guess, with yourself, what was that like? Because I think that's the perfect example.
I mean, you just, as a fan, of course, it's going to be kind of close to your heart when you lose, but also at the time, you have to realize this is your career.
Yeah.
So like, even though I was battling myself internally because we did make some, crucial mistakes down in the fourth quarter, it was like the better team won, which at that time, the better team, was the Seahawks. So I can't be mad at that. So you go out there, you do your job. And as a fan, you when you're a reporter, you take everything that you have as a fan and just throw it to the side. Hey, how you doing? Great game. And then when you get home and you want to release some of that energy or whatever like that, talk to your personal friends that actually know you, or either you could just jot some things down on Facebook or something like that. But always be positive about the outcome. And so, even though we had messed up, I sat there and said, hey, we dropped a few balls, but the Seahawks was a better team. They deserved this win.
I love it, man. And yeah, it's just very important to understand, kind of that fine line to walk, because I do think, especially now, as I was talking about before with 24-hour news, it's less news, it's more commentary at this point. Like it's just kind of people commenting on what happened. And so I think, coming with actual facts and real information, I think is very important. But I also think people like personalities. I mean, that's just obvious with the way everything's going. ESPN, Fox, as we said already, those 24-hour news cycles, they're all personality driven at this point. They're not really I mean, not to say some use facts, some don't, depends on which side of the aisle you sit on, I guess, in my opinion. But, it's just very interesting just to see how much is really personality driven. So I think, again, from that standpoint, like as long as you're coming with information that is real and relevant, it makes sense, staying positive and doing what you need to do, I think you're going to, absolutely continue to crush it, especially working or writing for the Seahawks, what you've done with the Nationals in the past as well. And I guess so tie this in now. So obviously we were talking about you're a publicist by night, essentially. You're a sports reporter by day, however we want to say it. Like how are you, when did you start and when did you realize that the publicist route was a route that either you could take or that you wanted to take?
So during Super Bowl 53 in Atlanta, I actually got the opportunity to kind of coordinate with Lawrence Teller's event as well as Michael Vick's event. And there was another event called the NFL Legends events. And so Mr. Ron, he does it annually. Mr. Ron, he allowed me to actually help out with his event. So he was like, do you know Publicist? When I first got into this field, that's why I tell like a lot of reporters, you want to get involved with some of the publicists because those are the gatekeepers. Because I try to weed out the middleman. And so like, instead of going after, team representatives, I actually know their publicists. So it's so much easier. You do a positive piece on their client, they're coming back to you. They will sit down and, contact you with the email or either a text message. Hey, I would like you to do an interview with my client, such and such. And you build that relationship up and you build that rapport and they know you're a positive person. So nonetheless, I just knew a whole bunch of publicists. So I'm like, one of the publicists that I knew, she had Dwight Howard, some of the Rams players, some of the Atlanta Falcons players or whatever like that. So I'm like, I could get her there. I could get this player there. I could get this player there. I know a couple of people that are actual players that's actually going to be out in Atlanta. So everybody was just like kind of shocked, like, oh, okay. And so nevertheless, I end up like helping out on the event. So I'm like, this is easy because marketing myself is so much easy. I don't have the followers, but a lot of people know who I am. And it's so much easier now to, get interviews with NFL players or, covering things like the White House correspondence and different things of that nature. Because, I transitioned from sports into now so entertainment. So I fluctuate between both the two because they kind of intertwine in itself. So nonetheless, after Super Bowl, I kind of felt, that I could do this. And so I ended up getting a small internship with the agency BMPR. And I was helping out with Lou Williams, the NBA basketball player, 6-man for the Clippers. And, I was on his campaign, helping out his campaign out with his clothing line. And so I did that for a couple of months, and it's like so much easier. And I'm like, I had a lot of contacts everywhere. And so I'm like, hey, I could definitely do this by myself. So my first client was Santia Deck. At the time, she was a rugby player.
She's incredible. I've interviewed her already before. She's amazing.
Yes, that's my former client. And, of course, she plays with the LFL. She signed that big contract. So, she signed on, and I got her to like the first week she signed on, I got her to 6 different events during SB week. Wow. And yeah, and like I tell people all the time, this is my life. I do this full time. And a lot of people usually come to me because I have the connections. And so it's like, hey, I want to get from point A to point B. And now I utilize that now because, as being a publicist, it makes me a better journalist as well as a reporter because I know the back end of what the players and the representatives go through because I'm going through it. And, you can market yourself a little bit better as a journalist because I tell people all the time, I'm like, hey, you have to post at, a certain around a certain time. So, you want to post at 8 o'clock, you want to post at 12 o'clock, you want to post at 5 o'clock, and you want to post at 9 p.m. And that's basically a general idea of how you get more followers and how you get more viewers, because at 8 o'clock, people are usually waking up. First thing they do is look at their phones. 12 o'clock to 1 o'clock, they're usually on break. They look at their phones. 5, 6 o'clock, they're usually getting off their work. They look at their phones. 9 o'clock, if you don't have a family, or even if you have a family, you putting your kids to sleep, you're looking at your phone. And so that's a great networking tool that I utilize, and it has helped me as a better reporter and journalist. So I post on a daily basis. And so nevertheless, with being a publicist, it broadens your horizons, and it gives you also more connections as well too. So it's like when I get people to events, if they get denied as talent, I can bring them in as media because at the end of the day, again, another marketing tool. At the end of the day, media is the ones that's pushing these individuals out. So if they don't know who you are, you still can collect them on the media side. You can collect, your connections and different things of that nature, and get some business cards from them. And then now you can forward them to me and say, hey, I talked with this person, and all of a sudden I want to do an interview with this person. Here's his contact information, or here's her contact information. And then as their publicist, I'll contact them and pitch them. So it's just more so like how to market yourself. And it giving me a better vision on how to market myself, just building my brand as well as building my client's brand.
I love it, man. I think it's great. And again, you kind of work the system a little bit. And I love that. Like kind of how you've been able to, you're just doing it in a really interesting way. You very rarely hear of publicists that are a part of the media, right? It's maybe going from one to the other, but very rarely is it, no, you are a media member and a publicist, and you're able to, I really like the point you made before. It's like, the back end, what reporters go through and what they want to hear and see from publicists. So that allows you to kind of just be able to pitch these stories a little bit easier and better, and really get them to understand, how they can, for lack of a better term, utilize that story, take advantage of it, and move forward with it as that media member. And as you said, they kind of control everything at this point. So kind of dipping your toes in 2 different pools. And I think you're taking great advantage of it, man. And I guess, what is it like, as you started becoming a publicist, like obtaining clients and giving them the understanding, like, hey, I know I was a media member, but I've networked with thousands of media members already. So I know everybody, I know what they want, I know what they like. So how was it like, especially those first few clients? You said Santia, but I mean, a couple of the others, Jennifer Cobb, who you graciously allowed me to have on the show, Chantel Taylor as well, incredible female football player. She was on the show. Each of those episodes should be out by now. But what, like, how are you obtaining clients, and what are you doing to get them to understand? Like, how are you pitching them to allow them to, have you be their publicist?
So most of the time I usually go on social media. And if they're like, a football player or any type of athlete or celebrity, I usually pitch myself, hey, I'm an independent publicist. I was saying if you wanted more exposure on your brand, I could get you to, Oscar week, Grammy week, this and the fourth. And then on top of that, on top of that, I could definitely help you out with getting you to like, bigger publications as well as getting your name out there. So here's the thing with a lot of the clients I have talked to, most of the thing, people have all these followers, but that's just it. And you want to be Googleable. Everybody was like, how do you get Googleable? And I'm like, you have to have consistent content on who you are. So whenever a person does an interview or a podcast or anything of that nature, they send me the link. That link already goes up on the internet. So every time they do an interview, it goes up on the internet. And then you start to see, you have more people that's looking at you, and then more people that actually did interviews on you. Now it's not one page anymore. Now you have 3 pages on yourself. And it's like, oh, this person is actually doing something good, because when reporters actually look at that person to do an interview, that's the first thing they do. They go to Google. They don't go to social media for real. They usually go to Google to see if they can figure out who you are and what you do at first. If they can't find that, then they go on your social media platforms and try to figure out what do you do exactly. And then even then it's like, do you have a website? If you don't have a website, then they go to your social media platform. So it's like different avenues, but a lot of people, they get things twisted. Everything is built off of perception. And most of these actors, actresses, and different things of that nature, they go off of followings. And so when I sit there and tell them, hey, this is what I can definitely do, it's just like, well, I have a hard problem talking with individuals down in LA, because LA, everybody's, some type of celebrity. And then I usually have the problem. It's like, oh, well, I can get in this event because I know somebody. I'm like, all right, you know somebody, but technically you're entourage. Why don't you want to be known for your work and your brand? And so it brings them another insight about that. And it's like, oh, okay, so I want to go to these events with my name and not actually go through somebody else's. And so, I tell them this is what I could definitely do. And, I give them a price. And it's either, hey, I'm going to be able to do it, or either I'm not. And I don't lie to my clients at all. And another thing is, again, marketing one-on-one. I'm always posting consistent content. So when you go to my page, it's like, this dude is everywhere. And that's what, Chantel had told me. She was like, one thing I noticed about you was you're everywhere. And it's like, why not? Like, it didn't seem like you lied about anything. You were everywhere. And I would like to flock around people that are doing something positive with themselves and helping other people, get to that next level. And so that's what my job is, to get people to that next level.
And how are you doing that for yourself?
Oh, man.
Right? Like, all the tricks of the trade. Like now, you need to get your brand out there. And it seems like you're doing a great job on your end, but what are you doing to try and get yourself out there a little bit more within the media as well? Because being a media member, now kind of being towing that line or straddling the fence, for lack of a better term, now as the publicist, you need to get yourself out there. So more people, when they Google search you, they're seeing you on all these interviews, right? They're not just going straight to your, so how are you doing that for yourself?
Oh, that's easy. I'm basically consistently posting each and every day. So I utilize hashtags. So, if I tell you, hey, I'm a publicist or whatever like that, the first thing you're going to do is Google what I do. And so with me getting my brand out there, I fluctuate, because at the end of the day, being a publicist, it's more of a hobby. That's not something I really wanted. To me, it's easy. But I do like, the outcome of it. I like when people sit there and say, hey, Fago, I've been around a celebrity, or I got this connection. Oh my gosh. With, Santia, she went to an event with Jamie Foxx, and she actually took a picture with him. And she was like, I heard the excitement in her voice. And she was like, oh my gosh, like Fago, like Jamie Foxx was like right here. I actually took a picture, and I hear the excitement, because that's how I used to be. When I'm around, my favorite players or different things, like I have that excitement. And that's make me feel good that, I got to this person to a higher level where they never thought they could get. So on the publicist side, that's great. But I will always be a reporter. I love it. I love the competitiveness about it. I love going after stories. I love the storylines. I love, just working the long hours. That is something I will always love. And, you're just not going to outwork me. So branding myself, I'm on, social media each and every day. I'm getting on these podcasts and telling people about my story, not just my clients, but just my story in general. With getting to where I'm at now. I've been in the field for almost 8 years. And a lot of people and I covered 3 Super Bowls. And a lot of people was like, man, you covered 3 Super Bowls. That's phenomenal. And these are guys that have been in the field for 20 to 30 years. And now I'm giving them knowledge. And I tell people all the time, never count anybody out. Just because somebody worked, little years than you can always learn something from someone. And I was like, take every conversation that you have with somebody. It's a learning tool. You could just talk to a regular person, but that conversation could be a substance that you need.
Yeah.
And, whether you're talking about patience, whether you're talking about worth, or either your work ethic, you can always learn something from a conversation. So I take that and utilize it for myself. And now, I've been very creative since, there's no sports going on. So now I'm engaging with my viewers. I'm getting on these podcasts. I'm getting on radio stations. And I'm getting on these publications that's doing featured stories on me. So every time you do a featured story or I'm on a podcast, my name starts trickling down. And so now I have I think 3 pages now. And then now I'm doing a YouTube channel. And usually I don't like to, get on these doing live videos, because I think, to me personally, I think that's kind of corny. Like, I'm kind of old school. Like, everybody don't needs to know everything what you're doing in life. But I also find that a great marketing tool, because people want to see your personality. They want to know who you are. They want to see a face, which is crazy because I post, something of that nature, whether it's my face or either a player's face or something like that, just for marketing purposes. But again, you just gotta be creative with it, and that's how I'm getting my brand out there.
Well, hey man, you're on a live video right now, so I hope it's not that bad. Hope you're enjoying it a little bit. I think we had some fun, man. Now you're just throwing daggers at me, and I feel bad. I feel like, no, I'm kidding. Of course, man. And I hope this is really interesting, and I really like the way, again, you've been able to kind of straddle that line and kind of be able to play both sides. But I love the fact that you say, the publicist side, that's a hobby. It's really the media, the reporter side that you're really loving. And so moving forward, I guess, what are some of those goals? What are some of those accomplishments that you're looking to do over the, the short, the intermediate and long term? Are you trying to create your own media company? Or, I know you said, sports and entertainment agency before we came on. Like, what are you trying to do, and how are you going to go 100% into one, or are you still going to try and do, I mean, not to say that you're not 100% into either of them, of course, but like, what are you trying to do moving forward?
Everything. I'm trying to take over the world.
Love it. Let me know if I can help, man.
Oh yeah, of course. Definitely. So anywho, I love being a sports writer, director, coordinator. I'm just trying to help people out in each and every way I can. And so I'm building my own publication as we speak. It's called New Stage Media. My ultimate goals is to cover Oscars and Grammys, because the biggest thing I have covered, which is a lot, my 5-year goals was to cover Super Bowl. I made it to year 6, but now, going into year 8, I have covered 3 Super Bowls. And each and every time I cover Super Bowl now these days, it's not as a sports reporter now. It's as a director, as a coordinator. I'm helping out with events. This is in the works, but I'm actually helping Dwayne Wade's dad with his gala event for the NBA All-Star Weekend next year. And that's something that's totally different. That's, out of my realm. But I love to learn about each and everything, because what I bring to the table, a lot of people can't bring to the table. And I have that marketing strategy, and that's what being a publicist kind of helped out with, just on the strategic part. So again, with sports media, that will always be my backbone, but I'm trying to learn each and everything and then apply it to help other people out as well. That's my whole thing, to reach one and teach one, so I can have other individuals that's out here that's, going towards their dreams and making their dreams happen. And when I die, I want to sit there and say, hey, in spirit form, I have done everything I ever wanted to do. Because you don't want to put yourself in a box as being just a sports reporter, because I tell people all the time, sports reporting is not generally sports reporting now these days. You could be a social media coordinator, and everybody wants to talk about money. And I know personally with Microsoft and ESPN, I was one of the applicants that they wanted at the time. I didn't make it to like the second or third round, but at that time, you know, they looked at my resume, they found like I was a right candidate. But they're willing to offer you like $50K with a degree. Yeah. As a reporter, like I moved to Washington State, only making $24K. And so that's the problem. And then everything, like where you get all your news from is the internet. So if you're very good with social media platforms, you could definitely kind of spread your wings and go into the social media aspect, because that's exactly what we do. Like right now, after we get off this, you know, interview, you're going to have to post this up on a social media platform. And so if you're very good with that, you could say, hey, I could be a social media specialist, social media coordinator, social media director, because now you're directing other individuals to put up daily content. Now you're valuable because everything is moving from the traditional aspect of reporting into social media. And so I try to give tips to, you know, other reporters, because, you know, you hear it all the time with being in this field. Oh, you know, I have X amount of experience, but I'm not really getting paid. So you want to be very versatile in this industry. And that's not just in this industry, any occupation, you want to be very versatile. And with me, again, when I die, I want to sit there and say, hey, I helped this person out. I helped that other person out. As Denzel Washington say, reach one, teach one, reach one.
I love it, man. This is incredible. And if there's anything I can do or anything the listeners can do to help you take over the world, I promise I'll put everything I can behind it, because I love your spreading positivity, trying to help others. I think that's a great way to do it. And it's through the lens of sports, man. And that's, you know, as we said before, it brings a lot of people together. So Fago, this was incredible. Fago Franklin III, sports reporter at Pro Players Insiders, creating his own media company, New Stitch Media. Excited to see what's going on there. Independent publicist, ruler of the world one day. Fago, sincerely appreciate your time today, man.
Yes, sir. And I definitely thank you for having me on here.
Of course.
However, I have one more question. I have one
Absolutely.
more question. Yeah,
Shoot
this is for you. So what are you doing since there is no sports going on? Like, how are you being creative with creating, you know, different platforms and getting your name out there as well?
Well, one thing I started doing is something you don't like, but I started live streaming a lot more and just getting the message out there. I mean, some of the time these goes on LinkedIn, everything goes on YouTube. So now I don't even have to worry. Everything just goes straight to YouTube. So that allows it to stay there. It goes live stream, and then I can go back. I can tag everything. I can do everything I need, add the social media links at that point. But that's kind of the biggest thing. I've also been able to do, I think, something like 100 interviews in the last 2 months because of quarantine. So many people are at home. So now I'm reaching out to higher ups at, you know, I've had vice presidents of Octagon on this show, where in any other world that is not happening. They're reaching out to me to come on the show. So that's always a good thing. I've been connected, I think, with like 5 or 6 publicists at this point. I don't really reach out for interviews anymore. They reach out to me. They say, hey, can you have this person? Can you have this person? I say yes to everybody, because I believe everybody has a story, and it's my job as the person asking the questions is I just have to draw that story out at you, right? Like I just have to find where the ins and the outs are and ask the correct questions. And I feel like I'm getting a lot better at that. And this has easily become my favorite thing I get to do. So if one day I can get paid a lot of money to do this, you know, maybe be the Joe Rogan of sports podcasting, I'd be the happiest person on planet Earth. So that's really been the thing that I've been doing most. Been working with a couple other companies, been helping with content and with figuring things out. And you know, man, that's really all we can ask for. We're here to have fun, here to talk about sports, and, you know, hopefully spread some positivity, some wisdom, and as you said, teach some people along the way, so that way we can help them. They're maybe at step A, B, or C. Maybe we can get them to D, E, or F, and you know, help accelerate their careers a little bit more. So, hope that answers your question.
Oh yeah, it did, and I'm definitely proud of you. You know, anybody that's in the media field, as well as just going toward their dreams, I'm definitely, you know, proud of them, because it takes, first and foremost, it takes a hell of just getting to that next level with achieving greatness. And I tell people all the time, you know, never let anybody define who you are as an individual. Never let anybody sit there and dictate to you that, hey, you're not going to go towards your dreams. And I tell people all the time, you have one life. Do something that you love to do, and do something that you have a purpose with. And my friend, I hear the purpose and passion, and I love it, man.
Yeah, it's literally my favorite thing I get to do is talk to people like you, man. So if you know anybody else, if you want to come back on when everything starts to start up again, or if you have something more stuff to talk about, man, I'd love to have you on again. This was an absolute blast. I really appreciate it, Fago.
Always, man. So definitely on this note, definitely have a blessed and productive day. And thank you for allowing me to be on the show.
You too, brother. Thank you so much.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.